Good morning, students. Welcome to the online class. Today we are discussing a new chapter, chapter number 11, the first war of independence, 1857. The first war of independence, 1857, is known as the Revolt of 1857 and Sepoy Mutiny. It was a revolt started by the Indian people, means some section of people against the British East India Company. The revolt of 1857 was the landmark in the history of India's struggle for freedom. The revolt of 1857 was the landmark because before this revolt, there was no such type of revolt started against the Indians. Because in this revolt, different sections of people like the peasants, soldiers, artisans, and princes and kings also joined in this revolt. Although they joined for their own cause, but it was a great revolt against the British. It shook the British Empire also. The revolt started on May 10, 1857 with the mutiny of soldiers in Meerut cantonment. In Meerut, in UP, there some soldiers also started the revolt against the British in May 10, 1857. The soldiers then marched towards Delhi. On May 11, 1857, they reached Delhi by crossing the river Yamuna and entered the Red Fort. They appealed to the Mughal emperor at that time, Bahadur Shah Jafar II, who was an emperor without any authority, to take over the leadership of the revolt. The soldiers who marched from Meerut cantonment and reached Delhi, entered the Red Fort and appealed to the Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah Jafar II to take the leadership. Bahadur Shah Jafar II was proclaimed the Shahenshah-e-Hindustan. The Sepoys captured the city of Delhi, killed many Englishmen and destroyed many public offices. The Sepoys, under the leadership of Bahadur Shah Jafar II, captured Delhi, killed many Englishmen and also ransacked or destroyed many public offices. Though the revolt was started by the Indian soldiers in the service of East India Company, the revolt was started by the Indian soldiers, those who were recruited by the British East India Company. It soon spread to the different parts of the country. It also spread to the different parts of the country. Different sections of the society like peasants, artisans, soldiers, educated Indians and many of Indian rulers also joined hands to fight heroically against the foreign rule. For that cause, the revolt was the landmark in the history of a freedom struggle. Because in this revolt, different section of people, not only the soldiers first, along the soldiers with the peasants, means farmers, artisans, educated Indians, and many Indian rulers also joined. They fought heroically against the foreign rule. And in this revolt also, Hindu and Muslims also come together to oppose the foreign domination. In this revolt, the Hindus and Muslims also unitedly fought and opposed the foreign domination. The event was also called the uprising, the revolt of 1857 or the Sepoy mutiny. Please hear. The first war of independence, the uprising, the revolt of 1857 or the Sepoy mutiny, different names by the British. But Indian historians call it the first war of independence. The Indian historians, they call it the first war of independence, as it was the first time that different sections of Indian society united and fought as one nation to throw off the shackles of a foreign domination. The Indian historians described that it's the first war of independence because different section of Indian society and different section of people in Indian society also joined, and they fought as one nation to throw off the shackles of a foreign domination. Means every section of people, they wanted to get rid from the foreign domination. Ever since the British had set foot on Indian soil, the nation was losing its wealth and also independence. The Britishers exploited not only politically, culturally, socially, economically also. They exploited our wealth, and India also lose its independence. The aim of a British was to exploit the resource of our country. Their main aim, main intention, to exploit the Indian resources and take the wealth. From 1757 onwards, 1757 a important year because Battle of Plassey with Tipu Sultan by the British. Tipu Sultan and a British, the Battle of Plassey. From 1757 to 1857, during 100 years, almost all wars won by the British. In 1757, the Battle of Plassey. In 1764, the Battle of Buxar, where the three kings also fought against British and they also defeated. In this way, from 1757 to 1857, the Britishers won almost every battle against the Indian rulers and kept on expanding the area under their control. After every war or every battle, they expand their area. They conquer and also annex the area. They sent Indian wealth back to England. They exploited Indians economically. They sent the Indian wealth to their country. This angered the Indians. Finally, 100 years later in 1857, from 1757 to 1857, a number of Indians revolted against the exploitation. Now we are going to discuss the causes of the revolt. I mean, what are the causes responsible for the outbreak of the revolt against the British? There are different causes like political causes, economic causes, social and religious causes, military causes, immediate causes. Political causes. The revolt was the outcome of the widespread resentment that had been boiling against the British for a long time. The revolt was an outcome of the widespread resentment. Means every section of a people have anger against the British, and that was continued for a long time. The Indian sepoys were dissatisfied with the treatment meted out to them. The Indian sepoys, those who were working under the British East India Company, they are dissatisfied because their salary is very low and they could not get the equal status with the British soldiers, and they are ill treated also. For that cause they are dissatisfied. The Indian rulers Bahadur Shah Jafar, Tantia Tope of Gwalior, Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi, and Nana Sahib of Kanpur had personal scores to settle with the British. The rulers of like Bahadur Shah Jafar, Tatia Tope of Gwalior, Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi, Nana Sahib of Kanpur, they have personal score against the British. They wanted to take revenge. They led the revolt in their respective territories. They led the revolt in their respective territories. The common people of Delhi, Lucknow, Gwalior, and other places had no narrow ambition. The common people, they also join in this revolt. They have no ambition. They wanted to end the foreign exploitation. The common people, they wanted to end the foreign domination. They wanted to end the British rule. For that cause, they joined in this revolt. The policy of annexation for Dalhousie, particularly the doctrine of a lapse, created fear and also resentment among the Indian rulers. The policy of a doctrine of a lapse, and it was a policy which was started by Lord Dalhousie. And by this policy, many kingdoms also annexed with the British Empire. They were not allowed to adapt heir to the throne. Doctrine of lapse means if any king died without own natural heir, then after the death or demise of the king, the kingdom automatically annexed with the British Empire. Means if any king died without own son, then after the death of the king, the kingdom automatically went to the British hand. This policy started by Lord Dalhousie. By this policy, many kings, those who died without own son, a natural heir, then their kingdoms taken away by the British. And the policy ensured that those kingdoms where the kings did not have a natural heir would have been taken over by the British after the demise of the king. Demise means death. It is believed that if the British would have not snapped the compensation that kings were paid earlier in return of a share in government, the kings would not have joined this revolt. The British signed many treaties with the kings and nawabs but violated them. That is common thing. The British also signed the treaties with the kings and nawabs, and as per their convenience they also violated. One such treaty that is signed with the Awadh was the subsidiary alliance in 1801. Subsidiary alliance, one such treaty signed with the Nawab of Awadh. The Nawab Wajid Ali Shah was compelled to accept the permanent British army within the territory and to pay a subsidy for its maintenance. Subsidiary alliance means the British wanted to protect the Indian rulers by providing some soldiers and a officer in the court of the king or Nawab. For that cause, the king also given some maintenance charge to the British. And he could not recruit any other European in his service without prior approval. If the British also signed the subsidiary alliance with any other king, the king could not recruit any other Europeans in his service without prior approval. He had to station a resident in his court, means a permanent British officer should remain in the court of the king, which reduced the power of Nawabs. Gradually, the Indians lost all trust in the British. By this policy, subsidiary alliance, the many Indian kings and princes, they have lost the trust on the British. Awadh had been an ally of the East India Company for nearly a century. By subsidiary alliance, Awadh also an ally with the British almost 100 years. Still, it was annexed on the plea that the government was not functioning properly. Then after that, the Britishers also told that the government of Awadh could not functioning properly. Then they annexed. The Nawab was exiled to Calcutta. Begum Hazrat Mahal took over the reign of Awadh. This shocked the other rulers. Then, on the pretext of that the government was not functioning properly, by this pretext, then they have taken Awadh, and the Nawab was also exiled to Calcutta. Nawab was also sent to Calcutta. Begum Hazrat Mahal took over the reign of Awadh. Then after that, Begum Hazrat Mahal also took the charge. This shocked the other rulers. Do you know, please hear. Lord Dalhousie was appointed Governor General of India in 1848. Lord Dalhousie was appointed as the Governor General of India in 1848. The 8 years of his rule are considered the greatest period for the expansion of British power in India. By the policy of a doctrine of lapse, Lord Dalhousie also annexed many territories, many kingdoms with the British Empire. Economic cause. The policy of economic exploitation and the destruction of the traditional Indian economic structure by the British caused widespread resentment among Indians. The Britishers exploited the Indians economically. The policy of economic exploitation, and they knowingly destroyed the traditional Indian economic structure, and these things also given the anger to the people, because every section of a people, every type of a people also exploited economically by the British policy. The Jamindari system exploited the peasants. In the previous class, we have discussed about the Jamindari system, means the previous chapter in history. Jamindari system, Royatwari system, Mahalwari system. These are the systems to collect the land revenue, because land revenue is the main source. The Jamindari system exploited the peasants who were forced to grow only those crops that the British industries required. The Britishers compelled our farmers to grow commercial crops which are necessary for them, because to feed the British textile industries, they also compelled our farmers to grow cotton, because cotton is the raw material to feed the textile industries. They were tortured or jailed on failure to pay the revenue in time. Those peasants who did not pay the land revenue in proper time, they were tortured and also jailed. Industrial goods like textile from Britain flooded in Indian market. The Britishers, they have taken the raw material like cotton from our country to feed the textile industry in Britain. They also prepared the finished good in their country and sold these things in our country. For that cause, the industrial goods like textiles from the Britain flooded in the Indian market. This destroyed the Indian industries, because if you compare the Indian textile and the British textile at that time, the British textile are cheaper than the Indian textiles, and it was affordable for the poor people. That's why this also destroyed the Indian industries and made the artisans and peasants unemployed. Whenever the princely states were annexed, the British got rent-free land and a huge amount of money. The princely states were also annexed. The British also got huge amount of money from the free rent-free land. The common people faced unemployment and also poverty. When Awadh was also occupied by the British, Awadh, after 100 years of ally, Awadh was also occupied by the British. Nawab's officials were also dismissed, and his army was also disbanded. The officers of Nawab and the army of Nawab was also dismissed, and his army was also disbanded. About 60,000 professional soldiers lost their livelihood. In this way, every section of people also exploited economically by the British policy. Then social and religious cause. The social reforms by the British were considered an interference in the customs and traditions of Hindus. Knowingly, the British interfere in our social and religious affairs. Many Indians opposed the introduction of Western education and the conversion of Indians to Christianity. At that time, many people, they also opposed the Western education. Western education means to English education. And at that time, many British Christian missionaries, they also converted the Indians to Christianity. And many conservative people in our country, they also opposed this policy. And the Hindu law of property was changed to enable a Christian convert to receive his share of ancestral property. They also knowingly changed the Hindu law. If any person from Hindu religion converted to Christianity community, then he also get the ancestral share, means a father's property. They knowingly changed the law. And the spread of a railway created further fear among the poor and illiterate sections. The spread of a railway means Lord Dalhousie, who was the Governor General of 1848 to 1856, he started the railway in our country. The first railway was started in 1853 from Mumbai to Thane. And when the railway also started, and it also created a fear among the poor people and illiterate people, and they thought that they would lose their caste, because in railway many people also travel in one compartment, and at that time there was also the untouchability, chhuachut bhedbhav was also common at that time, and they thought that by railway we also lose our caste. Indians were not allowed to travel in first-class train compartments. Indians were not allowed to travel in first-class compartments, because that was reserved for the Britishers. And the conservative Indians were alarmed by the rapid spread of Western culture and English education in India. The conservative people in our country, they have a fear by Western education and English education. The Britishers also lose our caste. Moreover, the British looked down upon Indians and followed a policy of racial discrimination. The British also started a racial discrimination which was continued in South Africa, that is known as the apartheid. Means the black and white discrimination. The British looked down upon the Indians and followed a policy of racial discrimination. The Britishers thought that we are the superior and the Indians are inferior, and they also advocated a judicial system based on the principle of equality, but in actual practice it has not happened. They also advocated that the judicial system based on the principle of equality means every person is equal in the eyes of law, but these things will not happen at the time of a British. Then military cause. The sepoys had helped the British to establish their empire in India, but instead of receiving awards or promotions, they were humiliated by the British. Okay, the first, the revolt was started by the sepoys in Meerut cantonment. Okay, the sepoys, the Indian sepoys, those who were recruited by the British, they helped to establish the empire in India, but instead of receiving award or promotion, they were humiliated by the British. They do not get the they are not getting the promotion or award, and they were humiliated by their higher officers. For that cause, the Indian sepoys having a anger and also against the British. There was a discrimination between the Indian and the British soldiers. There was a discrimination between the Indian and the British soldiers. Means there was a discrimination in the Indian soldier and the British soldiers. And the highest pay given to an Indian sepoy as a subedar was less than the minimum pay of a European recruit. The Indian soldiers, their highest pay as a subedar, and that is less than the minimum pay of a European recruit. The Act of 1856 made it compulsory for new Indian recruit to serve overseas. They also passed an act in 1856. They made compulsory to send the Indian soldiers to the other country, and it hurt the feeling of soldiers, as Hindus believed that overseas travel would lead the loss of caste. And at that time there was a blind belief that if any person should go to the other country by crossing the sea, then he should lose the caste. And then immediate cause. The cartridge of a new Enfield rifle had a greased paper cover which had to be beaten up before the cartridge was loaded into the rifle. At that time, a new rifle, that is Enfield rifle, also started. And the cartridge, means the goalies, the cartridge of the new Enfield rifle had a greased paper cover. There was a rumor that before loading the cartridge, one should bite the top portion of the cartridge, and the top portion of the cartridge was made of the cow and pig's fat, beef or pig's fat. The cartridge of a new Enfield rifle had a greased paper cover which had to be beaten up before the cartridge was loaded into the rifle. Before the cartridge was loaded in a rifle, the paper cover should be wiped out by beaten. It was said that the grease composed of a beef and a pig fat. The grease composed of the beef and pig fat, means जो गाय का मांस and pig's fat उसमें बना हुआ है. Both the Hindus and the Muslims refused to use them, as the cow is sacred to the Hindus and the pig is detestable to the Muslims. The soldiers of a Hindu community and the Muslim community, they denied to use these cartridge because the cow is also used as cow is sacred to the Hindus and the pig is detestable to the Muslims. On March 29, 1857, at Barakpur near Calcutta, Mangal Pandey, a young Indian sepoy from Bengal regiment, on March 29, 1857, at Barakpur near Calcutta. Mangal Pandey, a young Indian sepoy from Bengal regiment, refused to use the greased cartridge and shot down his sergeant. One of the soldiers in Barak regiment, Mangal Pandey, he refused to use the cartridge, and when his sergeant also forced him to use the cartridge, then out of anger, he shot down his sergeant. He was arrested, tried and executed. उसको बंदी कर लिया गया and also killed. When this news spread, many sepoys started the revolt. When the news of a Barakpur incident by Mangal Pandey also spread, then many sepoys also started the revolt in different places. Dear students, we have completed the first part of the chapter and the causes of the revolt, and the next period or next class we will discuss about the course of the revolt, the suppression of the revolt also. If any, please read the chapter, please read whatever we taught. Thank you. Have a good day.